Welcome back to the present, everybody. Today we're going to be discussing Silver the Hedgehog and his story, his origins, his connection to Sonic & Co. Or more specifically, how it just makes no sense at all. Now, I've technically been following Silver ever since he came out, since I played Sonic 06 when it was brand new, and that was his debut title. I only say technically though, because I didn't really take that much of a liking to Silver, and to be honest, his debut in Sonic 2006 plays a role in the story of how his own history has become a huge mess. It's no secret that Sonic 06 was poorly received, a critical failure, and that sentiment has existed for so long. People who weren't even around for Sonic 06 still know about its impact and effects. But don't let that fool you. The potency of the disappointment and outrage of 06 when it was brand new, nothing compares to that. Nothing, even though it's persisted for so long and has only just begun to fade away. At the time, in 2006, it was like the most purest form of negativity you could get. And the problem for Silver is this is the game he was born from. This is where we first met him. And because of that, he has heavy associations with the failures of the game. So his character was already off to a rocky start. But of course, that wouldn't necessarily confuse his backstory. Surely the game does a good job at establishing it. And for the most part, yes, it does. But then it stabs Silver in the back because, as we all know, Sonic 06 resets its own story by the end, making none of it happen. And in Silver's case, it also changes his future because instead of having Iblis roaming around and deleting everything, Iblis just isn't there. So Silver grows up under a completely different circumstance, unlike with Sonic, who just goes on about his day as if nothing had ever happened. But that also means that Silver didn't meet Sonic, didn't meet anyone in the cast, because he's never travelled back through time. Now, because of the dislike for Silver and 06 as a whole at that time, there was not a demand to have his characterization re-explored or re-established. Quite the opposite, plenty of people would have been happy to not see him come back. Please understand that even if you like Silver right now, as many people do these days, Silver is a pretty well-liked character. In 2006, even if you were someone who liked Silver, you probably wouldn't say that you do. You would just lock your front door and wait for the mob that will be there for many years to come to leave. I did not like Silver at this point in time. Now I don't mind him and even kind of like him, but back then, no way. No way I did not. My favourite thing about Silver back then was how he got kicked in the back of the head by Shadow, and that was probably true for many people. So the demand was low, and yet Sega didn't want to throw in the towel completely on their brand new character. So we would see Silver again in the spin-off game for the PlayStation Portable, Sonic Rivals, and this game will establish new sets of history for Silver, his new origin story, which presumably the main series has been using as its starting point for Silver ever since. So what does this story entail? The gist of it is that Silver comes from the future because his world has been threatened by the mad scientist Dr. Eggman Negro, the descendant of Dr. Eggman, and that with his camera technology, he will take a picture of the world and end all existence. What does he plan to do once he no longer has a planet to live on? This is questions that will never be answered, but for Silver's point of view, the only thing that matters is stopping the Doctor. But this choice in Nemesis alone already does not help the problem of the timeline, because obviously this descendant of Eggman had already shown up in the series before, in Sonic Rush, and was actually Blaze's nemesis. But the problem is Blaze had a conflicting origin story with Sonic 06 itself, where she showed up to be a member of the future all along, which is incompatible with her Sonic Rush origin story. So with Rivals, being the first game to mention all of these details after 06 writing itself out, everyone's just had to assume, okay, anytime there's a conflict, Rivals takes priority. So that means that yes, the Eggman from the future is not from the Soul Dimension, and yes, the Silver we now know met Sonic & Co. through the events of Sonic Rivals 1 as they ended up coming together to stop the photography mastermind. So this is the Silver we deal with from this point on. 06, completely irrelevant, nothing to do with it, and also, very key here, Silver and Blaze, nothing to do with each other. She is not in either of the Rivals games, and that's the good point. There is a second Rivals game, and in that one, there is this fiery demon harassing the future known as an Ifrit, and Silver needs help to take it out. So this is sort of like the Iblis future, which, tough luck Silver, I guess you'll never be free, but it doesn't have many implications for the timeline as a whole that the first Rivals didn't already set up. It's still that origin story, it's just getting around to, I suppose. But then, Sonic Generations, in its celebratory glory, decides to put yet another dent in the narrative of Silver's timeline, because Silver is encountered in Crisis City as a boss fight, and the fact that Crisis City is even there, considering it's supposed to not exist anymore, was already a big question mark. But like I said before, you just have to assume Rivals takes priority of any conflict. So yes, Crisis City is here, but it's just here, you know. It doesn't have any story implications. 06 has still wiped itself out. None of the characters know why Crisis City is here. It's just there to be a reference for the player that they will remember, and the characters have no clue what it means. Okay, fine. Blaze is also associated with Crisis City because of her appearance in 06 and time in Crisis City. But again, similar story, ignore it. Silver and Blaze still have barely anything to do with each other. Except, they kind of do. On the DS version of Sonic Colors, there are many moments you can interact with the large Sonic roster, because yeah, unlike the main team developing the console game, the people on the DS didn't forget why a lot of people enjoyed the series and actually included Sonic's friends. But there's an interesting interaction between Silver and Blaze, who are sort of paired up in that game, where they take note of how well they work together despite that being the first time they meet one another, and how they seem to just get along really well. And that's a nice little reference to their partnership during Sonic 06, which still, by the logic of Colors DS, that 06 stuff never actually happened. Or, sorry, it did happen, but it then deleted itself, and yet their friendship has persisted through the deletion in a minor form that these characters are kind of realizing as they spend time with each other. So that takes place before Generations. Does the Generations game even care about DS colors though? I don't think so. But for the point of this conversation, we'll pretend it does. So there we go, there's the lightest of connections for them to show up together. But then, because of course, another issue arises. There's been a new collection of bios for the Sonic characters, and with Silver's in particular, we get this nice generalization of who he is, his naivety, he means well, his powers, blah blah blah. But there's this bit where it talks about his origin point being an event that Sonic, Blaze and some others helped him sort out to protect his future. And the fact that Blaze is mentioned alongside Sonic, and we all know what this is. This is not talking about Sonic Rivals 1, this is talking about Sonic 06. And now, all of a sudden, everything Rivals was trying to hold together has broken apart. Because this is telling us that the Silver we know, the Silver we're following in the modern timeline, is in fact actually the one that can draw its origin point from the Iblis Crisis in Crisis City, who did work with Blaze to put a stop to it. Now, it says he can't remember how, because obviously timeline got destroyed, but he remembers enough to where he does, yeah, Sonic helped me out, I think, and Blaze helped me out, I think, which you would think, oh, that's hand-wavy enough, but no, it's not. So, Sega, which is it? Does Silver know Sonic because he remembers the timeline that got deleted? Or does he know Sonic from Sonic Rivals 1? Because if it is he knows Sonic from Sonic Rivals 1, Rivals 1's story doesn't make any sense. For a start, when he sees Sonic, he should have some sort of sense of who this man is based on this bio, but in the game, he does not. And then Eggman Nega double doesn't make sense now, because we're referencing that Blaze was still in the future because he also kind of remembers Blaze, but the main games have been using Rush as Blaze's origin story, which is where Eggman Nega is not from the future. So then you go to Rivals 1, where we're already buckling under the pressure of trying to figure out why he doesn't recognize Sonic, and then the photography man being there just is a paradox. Like, the world should implode. It should delete itself as soon as he opens his mouth, because it's impossible. He can't be from Rush if we're using 06, but we can't be using 06 if we're using Rivals. So they all just collide with each other. Oh, it's such a paradox. Part of me is okay with it, okay? Because Silver's whole story and struggle in 06, I think, was a lot more interesting than what he got in Rivals. But I also prefer Blaze's backstory being from Rush, and that is definitively what the series actually assumes. She's a princess from the Soul Dimension, the end. The future, nothing to do with Blaze. So this nice little sentiment to 06 just unravels everything, and now Silver's past is this vague, just don't think about it. That's the official answer, because you can't pinpoint where it begins anymore. I have no clue where he has met Sonic. The bio's telling me he remembers the time Sonic helped him, kind of. So what, did he meet him in Rivals? Rivals really is struggling to be canon now, and if we take Rivals out of the equation, where does Silver meet Sonic after the timeline deletes itself? Even assuming he remembers Sonic for some reason, where does he meet Sonic after 06? If it's not Rivals, and thus not Rivals 2, is it Forces? Because that wouldn't make any sense. He travels back in time, no one really knows who this guy is. That doesn't make sense. Forces, assumedly, relies on Rivals 1 and 2 happening, which is why everyone is kind of chill with Silver coming back again. I'm sure someone is going to come up with this big brain explanation for me in the comments, but until then, I'm looking at a big mess. What do you guys think? Because that's as best as I can put it together. I can't find a way of bridging these gaps without intentionally pretending to ignore visible holes in the narrative. I feel like there is a big need for a definitive, pinpointed, this is exactly how Silver has met everybody, now that we've got this new bio, because it doesn't make sense. Let me know what your opinion is down in the comments below. And thank you for watching this video all the way to the end. It really does help out the channel, and if you'd like to do me a favor, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe down below, or share the video around to those who may be interested. With that all said and done, I hope you have a great day, and to see you next time. This is the Mighty Emperor, signing off.